story with you. Yesterday, I came into GITEX and I was watching this video. It reminded me of my first mobile phone. Do you remember when you got your first mobile phone? For me, it was 20 years ago. I was turning 17, and my mom gave it to me as a birthday present. And it was the first mobile phone that came with an integral antenna. That was in the year 2000. So by now you can calculate how old I am, actually. So in the year 2000, that phone came out, and it was a 2G phone. And what can you do with a 2G phone? Make phone calls and send SMS, right? So I was holding this phone when I got it, and I was thinking, what should I do with it, actually? What's the use case? 20 years ago, if you remember, people used to talk to each other face to face, make appointments, call the landline home to people, and say, hey, let's meet on Saturday at 2 o'clock in front of McDonald's. And people used to show up on time because, you know, there wasn't any other way, right? So they knew someone was actually waiting there for them. Today, 3 mobile technology generations later, 20 years later, no one could have ever predicted what connectivity would do to transform our lives. And as I'm standing here at GITEX today, I'm thinking about 5G and the use cases that we see all around us. Isn't it exciting? What will our children say to us 20 years later? Really, Mom? You used to use 5G for drones and remote monitoring? That's so basic. Can you imagine? We're creating history together, and I think that's super exciting. So welcome to today's seminar. My name is Maha Bouzeid. I'm heading up sourcing and partnering for Middle East and Africa region. And I'm really excited about this subject because 5G is about building the right ecosystem to really make 5G a success. So we're going to be talking about unlocking the 5G business potential because use cases are there already. We know them. It's about how do we actually monetize them now. Before I go more into the seminar, I just wanted to share a few practicalities with you. So please make sure your phones are on silent, but don't switch them off. I know no one is switching off their phones anymore. We can't live without them. But just make sure they're on silent. We're going to be using them today, actually, because I want to engage with you as an audience and ask you questions. So we're going to be using mentimeter.com. I'll tell you more about that later. And then we will have a Q&A if we have time for it. I hope we will have time for it. So you can ask questions. So if you have any ideas that pop up, reflections, please remember them so you can take them in the end. All right, so before we get started, I want to test the Mentimeter on you, actually. So we're going to have a first question. So this is the statement. There are no real applications or use cases for 5G. Is that true or false? So if you pick up your phone, you go to menti.com. It's just a web browser. Make sure you have data switched on or Wi-Fi. And then you will be prompted to put this code 826137. You do that, and then we will see in real time here what you think. Are there? And I can tell you this is anonymous. So if you really feel that this is not true, it's okay. You can say that. No one will be checking on you later. Okay? I really hope that all of you actually said false to this question, right? Because we all believe, otherwise we wouldn't be sitting here, that there are use cases for 5G, right? Perfect. So then we move on. And, you know, as Ericsson here at GITEX this year, we are talking about 5G being here and now already. It's not in the future anymore, it's here. In fact, 39 operators globally have already launched 5G in their networks. So it's already live. So 5G is live with 39 operators globally. 10 of those operators are here in the Gulf. So the Gulf was really at the forefront of actually deploying 5G. It's amazing. This is where it's happening. And again, as I mentioned before, 5G is about making sure that all the players in the industry come together and collaborate, whether it's vendors, service provider, industries, the regulator, academia, startups. And this is exactly why we have today decided to have panels that bring all these players together to actually talk about this subject. Together with Arthur D. Little, we did a global study to look at the monetary value of 5G. So what is the actual potential in the year 2030? And this is what we could see. For the region, Middle East and Africa, where we are today, we believe that there will be $98 billion to grasp in terms of 5G enabled revenue. And you can see in every step of the value chain, you see how this is broken down. For service providers, depending on which role the service provider takes in this, there is also different values, as you can see. So if you're a network developer only, there's 15 billion US dollars for you to grasp. If you actually take the next step and go into service enablement, that figure more than doubles to 40 billion. That's quite impressive. And then if you take another advanced level up, then you become a service creator, and you're up to 46 billion to grasp. So today, we want to spend our time here to discuss how can we tap into this money here, right? This is what we all want. So with that, I want to welcome, I'm very honored to have fantastic panelists joining me today. I spoke to each one of you earlier, and I think we're going to have a really interesting discussion. So first up, Hatem Bamatrab, Group Etisalat CTO. Welcome, Hatem. Mobile CTO. And then we have Hamad Al-Marzouk, Zain Kuwait, Chief Enterprise Business Officer. Tariq Al-Awadi, TRA UAE, Executive Director of Spectrum Affairs. Ibrahim Al-Najjar, DP World UAE CIO. And last but not least, Henrik Nordström, Writer CEO. Great, welcome. So, I'm going to start with you, Hatem. So, 5G, I mean, UAE was among the first globally to launch 5G. Why did you want to be first with it? Was it just to be first, or was there an idea behind it, actually? And what did you see as the benefit for consumers of being so early with 5G?
Well, first of all, I would like to thank you to invite us in this panel. Happy to be here to share with you our 5G story and 5G journey and the overall technology advancement. So I believe to begin with, I lived in the industry for so many years, and I have really seen such sorts of question whether we introduce, is it the right time now to introduce a new generation of mobile network? So that discussion happened between when we were introducing the 3G.
Sorry, so we can welcome Ala, Mobile CTO. We just started actually, you didn't miss anything. Don't worry.
So as I was saying, that there is a continuous debate every time that we are ready to introduce a new generation. So when we moved from the second generation to third generation, there was a lot of skepticism from the industry, from the market. A lot of voices saying that is it now the real time? Why do you do it? And similarly, when we were going to launch the 4G, basically the LTE, there was also a lot of voices, a lot of sound, lots of opinion also around the timing. There is no real use cases like the question that you have asked. There's no devices, there's no ecosystem. So what do you guys do and why do you really invest? And Etisalat, I think that throughout our history, we've proven at least in this part of the world, in the region, that when it comes to technology advancement, we are always at the forefront of it. It's because of one thing. It's not for the sake of technology. We are not a bunch of engineers that we like to play with the technology. It's not like that. So it's because we believe that technology really transform and open a lot of opportunities for businesses, for people. We could create a lot of value from being advanced and be the early introducer of such technology. And in fact, also the other thing that you don't expect to launch a 5G network and you complete it in 1 year. It takes also some time. There is a learning curve, there is a rollout process, you focus on specific areas and then you expand your coverage footprint and etc. So it's also a journey. So you have to start from one point.
Okay, thank you, Hazem. Very good. So you see an advantage of actually being a first mover, and Fadi mentioned that in the previous panel as well, that actually we have seen from previous generations that being first actually leads to, you know, a bigger part, getting a bigger part of the opportunity. So thank you. So moving on to Ala, then welcome Ala again. Great to have you with us. No worries at all. You're more than welcome. So Ala, for somebody, how do you predict the future with 5G, and where do you see growth coming from?
Interesting question. But there is a saying that if you want to predict the future, you have to study the past. And I think every technology, when it started built, when you started 2G, which was completely voice-based, and I recall the time when the edge came to the picture. You know, you just inject the internet into a system that was not built for the internet. And luckily the 3G, when they built it, the engineering part, was built on the internet-based concept. And but still, it was not built on the video, and the huge demand. And I recall the time when we started building the 4G, there was no voice call. You know, it was a time where everyone was missing the voice. We have to do the CS4 back before the Volties and the Korean stories and all these kind of things. And now, what I think the 4G, I mean, what is missing, I think IoT is there, but was not built for IoT. I mean, what we need to do if we want to predict the future is create a platform where we push the smartness on the edge of the network. And when you do that, all these kind of things of machine critical and IoT, and we need someone to connect the dots, like Steve Jobs, I mean, where he could look to the future without closing the concept of smartphones, which was not smart. So I think IoT still, of course, 4G can support IoT. This is the dilemma. It's exactly where 2G was supporting internet, but was not built for the internet. It's exactly like 4G, 3G was supporting video. You could watch YouTube. Was not the experience. Was not built for that kind of base, and that's what we should predict the future. If you want to predict the future for Saudi Arabia, it's somehow where you could do the machine learning and doing all these kind of IoTs with the system that push the edge smart of the network to the last element, unlike doing it in the core side like it was happening in the 4G. I don't know if I answered your question or not.
But it's actually a great segue
complicated.
to the next, actually. It did, kind of. But,
Too engineering.
But I like that. I like that, exactly.
You know what job it is.
We're going to spin on that now, actually. Very great. So Hamad, I mean, talking about IoT, this is your area of expertise, right? So you have launched a few enterprise offerings on 4G. How do you see that evolving into 5G?
First, thank you for giving us this opportunity to discuss the IoT and the 5G. I just collect some information. I think Kuwait is the first in 5G. So it is the first commercial. And before answering the question, 5G is being pushed by divisions of the countries. This is the main reason why we have 5G in every country. And what we're doing now is, we know that the use case today is fixed wireless. We're working on fixed wireless, and we come to the business now. It's done from the CTOs, it comes to the business, is to find new use cases of filling up this network. So this is basically what we're doing. So going back to your question, 4G, yes, we work with Ericsson, we launch on using the 4G and the 3G and the 2G, all the legacy connectivity, building up a smart metering project throughout the whole country. It's already launched, it's already running as an IoT project. But how much projects similar to the Ministry of Electrical Motor project that we can build, we need to make the technology available for the mass, where the ministries could spend this much to build up platform to build up this kind of solution. So our target is to make this kind of technology available to every enterprise. And the other services that we work on, which is the video intensive. 3G was available for video, 4G picked it up. Now we need to make sure the video analytics available for the enterprise. So I believe 5G is a technology that focuses on the enterprise. 4G is mainly on the consumer, and now we need to on the enterprise.
Anyone want to comment on that? Enterprise?
Other than Kuwait is the first.
Other than Kuwait is the first, that was important for Hamad. Great. So, Tade, I'll go over to you actually. Middle East is a global front runner in terms of spectrum management. How come you were out so early, and what did you see that other parts of the world did not see when you started allocating spectrum for 5G?
Thank you very much, Maha. First of all, I'd like to thank Ericsson for organizing this seminar. It's very nice to see this session with all those people. Well, I can tell you that after the BR15, or the Communication Conference, ITU, immediately that TRA, we started talking about working on having new technology, which is 5G. So after that, immediately in 2016, beginning of 2016, we established a committee here in the UAE. If you call it 5G committee or 5G forum, headed by our Director General, and with the consist of the CEO of two operators and the Director myself. The aim of that one to start talking to all people, to all stakeholders, from operator, from the vendors, from the entities, government entities, private, and the consumer also. And our target that time, when we put it, that we need to have full 5G commercially as Expo 2020. So that was our target. We started from there, and then we established different three committees: one committee for the spectrum, one for the network, and one for the verticals. And we start calling the people to come there, for holding meetings over there, where after that we, based on spectrum committee, we managed to get good spectrum to start with the operators. You can see that what's going on in the GCC. It was the first coming, UAE, Kuwait. I remember that day, it was one day, 3 operators, they said all of them, they are first.
So who do you think was first?
Not that I'll keep it quiet, because we know who's the person. We know everyone who was having what was. So we know each one operator what they have offer. Anyway, the band that they have started with, the frequency band, they started with the C band, which is 3.4 to 3.8. If you see that this band within this region, in Arab region, especially the 3.6, 3.8, it's not allocated as a primary for mobile service, IT. But in ASMG, I'm also chairing the ASMG group for Arab Spectrum Management Group. Last year we have decided to allocate this band for mobile service as a primary within the region, outside the rate regulation of ITU. So enabling all our operators in Arab region, not only GCC, in Arab region, to start deploying the 5G with this frequency band, because the other band still, which is coming, the DRC is coming right now, the DRC 19, still not finalized which millimeter wave that will go for 5G or IP 2020, but at least all operators started right now with this spectrum. So when we started as DRA UAE, we said that we need to have something at Expo 2020, and that is our goal. And that is our operator working right now. Thank you.
So it was a good deadline toward the Expo 2020. So let's be frank to ourselves. I mean, as an industry, all of us, including vendors and the providers, and we haven't been very good at monetizing the previous generations of mobile broadband, right? And with us today, we actually have two high players here from the industry who maybe have leveraged that sometimes. So maybe, Henrik, could you tell us a little bit about your solution that Brighter gives, and how do you make money out of it?
First of all, thank you for bringing us here. It's actually just a little coincidence. It's exactly 4 years ago, 2 days ago, the 5th of October 2015, that Reiter and Ericsson signed a cooperation agreement to develop the world's first medtech device on the UICC electronic SIM card. So, and we now, just a few weeks ago, received our CE certificates and market approval to actually be able to start the process of going commercial. And the coincidence that we're sitting here at this panel today is that the UAE is the world's first market to receive the ACTIS diabetes management.
You're fixing it now. Try again.
The world's first easy connected medical device. I'll just take the opportunity to show it, just everybody gets an opportunity to see it as well. Now, diabetes patients on insulin can actually rely on autonomous, secure, reliable communication without the linkage to the mobile phone or directly through the global roaming approach that the eSIM technology allows for. So that for us is an important aspect. Mobile operators, this is what we've been working with Ericsson over the last few years. This is an essential part because we see the reach, we see the reliability, we see the infrastructure that mobile operators can offer to companies like us to really provide real-life data as a support for people who suffer from chronic diseases.
Fantastic. So actually for you, Hannah, you don't really care what the technology in the back is as long as it gives you what you're talking about, reliability, speed, low latency, etc., right? So
Exactly. I don't really care if it's called 2G, 3G, 4G, 5G, 6G, 7G, as long as it really makes a difference for the users of our service.
And before I give the word back to the operator to see how we're going to support these fantastic solutions to be deployed, I'm going to ask Ibrahim as well. So, DP World, then, what are you planning to do? Can you tell us a little bit about your vision globally and locally in the UAE, and what you need from the operators to make it happen?
Actually, for us in DP World, I'm in between the positions. I don't care what the technology is called or what its details are. But at the same time, I have to be conscious about these are actual constraints and limitations. Today, if you look at our connectivity and compare it with the vision that we want to reach, technology is a bottleneck because there are so many things that need to be done in logistics. So to put it in context, we always take this as an example internally among the team. When we take the analogy of the internet itself and how it transformed our life and how it made us connected and made basically the whole world as a small village. And that was through the ability to link people and improve the communication capabilities of those people and the transformation or the transmitting of information. If you take this image, DP World, which is a global trade enabler, we are doing similar but with the physical movement of goods. We are linking the world, making the world a smaller village. And if you look around you today, almost 90% of the items and the things around. And with that, we tend to rely on technology. When technology itself is a limiting factor, it becomes a slowing factor in the process of progress and growth. So definitely, the introduction of 5G and the unlocking of all this capacity and the huge latency will bring all the topics that today you see in GITEX. Everybody's talking about IoT, about artificial intelligence and big data analysis. And as we know, for us to reach that level of artificial intelligence that everybody visualize and dream of, we need a huge amount of data. To bring a huge amount of data, we need to collect many of the data points. To collect these data points, we need connectivity. So in a DP world, in a port context and an economic zone, in a way we operate in an environment where it's a city within a city. So we have the ports, the roads, the traffic inside, the movement of people, the transaction of the companies, let's say of the free zone itself, the logistics, the warehouses, and all of these are actually by themselves are complex processes. So to automate them, to bring them to the level that we want to elevate and say that we want to enable trade and make it faster and make it more seamless and all, we need to collect and connect many of these points, to analyze these points, and with that, we need the underlying infrastructure. And 5G in this case is one of the promises or the bets that we have for the future where we can leverage this technology and bringing that vision.
Really exciting, and I know that by end of this year you plan to do a proof of concept in Jabal Ali port, right? And together with Etisalat actually, so we have, you know, potentially a fantastic marriage here coming up between the two of you here, talking about matchmaking.
So to comment on the previous question, who's first?
Probably did
it's
the work.
who realize the value maybe of this technology is considered to be first.
Great, thank you for that. So Hatem, then, what do you plan to do to help Ibrahim make his vision a reality in the UAE?
First of all, we need to work on his perception that technology did not work for us for the past. We believe that technology changes the way we live, changes the way that we do business. We've been committed here, at least in UAE, we've been committed that we will always be at the forefront of technology innovation and technology advancement. And this has also happened in history, so we were the first who launched the 2G in the Middle East, the first who launched 3G, the first who brought the internet here, the first and the next. So there's so many firsts in our history, in our records here. So back to the question, what do we promise? We promise, and we are committed, of course, to DB World and other verticals and our partners that we are working with closely, to enable them towards their journey of digital transformation or the productivity that they are seeking out of the technology. So Ibrahim talked about the operating model itself, remote monitoring, for example, from one area to the other, industrial IoT. All of these technologies, we are working, of course, very closely with them to create relevant use cases specifically for them. And of course, we are working with other also verticals too, to bring that value that people want out of 5G.
Perfect. And I mean, that's just the beginning, right? You operate how many ports globally, Ibrahim?
So we have a presence of around 80 sites around the world. Many of them are seaports. We have also economic zone. And the way we position ourselves is not only about the port itself, it's one piece of the whole journey of, let's say, supply chain. But we try to enable the trade across all the verticals. And with that, we need more connected, more seamless services, and the visibility ultimately to the traders. Like brighter today, we were discussing about the need for having this seamless visibility of and tracking of the shipments. And for us to do this, we need to be always connected. We need to gather enough data and process data. At the same time, so also I want to touch upon your question about monetizing. So there are two ways of potentially bringing this into monetization. One is bringing value-added services to our clients and customers through smarter services, through more seamless and easier way to do trade. This is one sector, and in that I would think of many of the traders. And the other area where we can monetize and bring value is internally, where we can become more efficient. So through automation, through autonomous trucks. Today we are investing in autonomous trucks. And again, today the bottleneck for autonomous truck, one can be, let's say, the regulation aspect, because that is still being formed even around the world. The other is how we can go in a mass scale, because it's easy to make one truck that navigates by its own, but to go in a mass scale operation where you have a population of vehicles communicating and processing data on the edge or back in the data centers, you need the open bandwidth, you need the instant response. 5G could be one of the unlocking technologies that will bring us to that vision.
I just want to add to this. 5G is one important pillar of the fourth industrial revolution. And we are witnessing now this industrial revolution. Together, 5G, together with AI and IoT and machine learning and robotics, all of these technology combined will enable enterprises and a lot of industries really to enter that industrial revolution. And throughout history, we've seen that in every industrial revolution, there are winners and there are losers. Whoever really adopt the technology and the trend can win, and unfortunately, some others will lose.
Perfect. So now we've touched on two use cases here, actually. One remote diabetes monitoring, and the other is sports. Actually, I'm going to ask the audience now if we can get the Mentimeter to work this time. We're going to ask you a question, and that is the following. What do you see as the next 5G use case in the Gulf region after mobile broadband? So, sorry, you can't see the options now, but you can see it in your phone. If you go in, you see transport is one, manufacturing, we have entertainment, and we have healthcare. So there is more than that, of course, there are more industries, but I wanted to give you a few options to choose from. So as you're voting, we can see the results coming up here. Let's say that ports goes under transport, if you're wondering, how did we group them there? Great, so now, Brahim, because you're sitting here, transport is booming up here. And we have
it is, but I'm also keeping an eye on entertainment. Seems that people want to watch more Netflix, I know.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
It's good, it's good.
Exactly.
I see that
Everyone wants to be
those people
entertained.
seem to be very concerned about their health.
You're concerned about their health
They
now.
don't seem to be
Yes.
so concerned about their health.
Yeah, if you are not concerned, we should be then, right? Okay, so great. This is good to see actually what you think here. So on that actually, I want to ask you, Ala. Ala, what do you think is the next, use case in Saudi after mobile broadband?
So I have to answer for this. So I don't know which one. You want the honest one or?
What was the question?
I have two answers.
You have two answers. That's
the honest
fine.
one and
that's fine. An honest one and
the
then
fake one.
fake. Okay, fine. That's fine. As long
Our
as you tell
industry
us
was
which is the honest
based
one.
on fake it till you make it. This is what I say. But anyway, if I would like to bring the attention to the big elephant in the room, that this 5G is not the 5G that we are talking about. So this is the non-standalone 5G, which means all these cases is similar to the 4G because it doesn't have the machine critical. So wherever, how much we fake it, we're gonna make it. I'm not gonna doubt this, but it's a fact that standalone 5G is the one which all of us here agree that it's gonna be a revolutionary things to the operators. Until that comes, we could see the big players like China Mobile, where they want to launch the standalone to start with, but they could not because of the ecosystem and the standardization. If we want again to go and study the past, I know it's not the same, but it's similar to the 4G when everyone was pushing for the 4G standards and the WiMAX came out of nowhere. I know it's not the same story, but came and solved a resolution of a problem. But then the 4G, the real one. So if we want to answer your question, going back to the question, if you're gonna say to me on non-standalone, what is the applications? Of course, the famous one, which is the only one, whether you like it or not, is the WTTX. Okay, and we know that this can be done with the 4G with a more cheaper price. But, and there's a big but, as Mr. Hadi was saying, it's going to be a step by step. So we need to entertain the technologies and the vendors to keep paying them, for new software upgrades, So, we're not as an operator as the fat cat as in the past, We need to be saying that there are certain revenues already took over and it will never come back, like SMS or at least in Saudi, the international calls, things OTT. some kind of hope, as there is in other regions, but in certain countries the dilemma is so high that it's went beyond the limit. So if you want to tell me that you are investing 5G non-standalone and you're expecting 1, 2, 3, so we're gonna go with this only WTTX till the standalone come on the ground, till it business case being developed. I think a good 2 years of a good dilemma. Maybe things will go faster, maybe not, but knowing what's the situation there, we could see that there is a big potential for a new revenue stream. I mean, in segmenting the customers by itself, this is something that we created. But the zero latency, I mean, car industry, you know, it's already a dying industry for it. So it's not going to be the one who's going to save the telecom operator. You know, you see people are merging, you know, so don't expect that they're going to pay the bill. And there is a lot of things coming here. It's not really women's driving now. It's not a big issue.
But it's great. I mean, thanks for being honest about it. I just want to see if, Hamad, are you equally optimistic, or do you agree with Alaa here, or do you have different view?
We can only be optimistic. We cannot be pessimistic on moving on the 5G. And like I pulled the legs of UAE on being the first, I'll now pull the legs of the CTOs, because our industry has been heavily, and we as a telco, and I talk from a telco perspective, we usually never talk to any other industry outside. When we do an event, we go to the GSMA, it's only us telcos. We don't reach out to the industry. We need to be in industries like GITEX, we need to be in places like CES, where we see different verticals and we start talking about it. And we are seeing the shift, so what's going to help us is shifting our mindset. We started to hire pharmaceutical just for us to understand the industry. I've been in a meeting talking about drugs reaction. What does telco have to do with drug reaction? And this is where we need to get rid of, with the way of the carrier grade setup that we want to do, because as we hear from the industry, they don't care about what kind of transport they go on. They just need this service reliability, they need an SLA that works with us. So we don't need to work on this is what we have, this is the carrier. We are always looking inward as an industry. So 5G gave us the opportunity to go and look outward and to move forward, to look into what can we do for this. Now, if you going back to your initial question about what is the use case that we want to do, at least for myself, we are in a region that's not heavily manufactured. So Industry 4.0 it's not talking to us. Maybe in UAE with the ports, it could be, but we need to be looking for the mass. And I believe remote health monitoring is a big thing that we all need to work. And remote health monitoring doesn't require 5G, but requires telco to talk to the industry. It requires them to have the right platform for us. And 5G doesn't work alone. 5G works with the cloud, with the edge cloud, with moving. At the end, you need to find the right cost-effective solution. So you need to get rid of the licenses that you put on the hardware, push it to the cloud, pay usage, as a service. These are the things that we need to talk about. And these are the transformation that we're doing in the industry. And 5G is giving us at least a reset button for us to rethink our business model. And this is where I see the value is, as long as we move away from CTOs.
I feel like Hatem wants to reflect on that, or no?
I completely agree. Completely agree that we were the first.
We need to put that as a statement in the end, just to make sure everyone got that. Henrik, you want to fill in?
Microphone to work with. I appreciate this. This is a very interesting discussion, because I've been fighting for 4 years together with Ericsson to start this discussion about when will the mobile operators move on from being a dumb pipe of data, dumb pipe of things, to actually take a step up in the value chain. Because you have the consumers, you have the reach, you have the infrastructure, and I would say you're almost a dying dinosaur in the sense that the margins are shrinking. So you're no longer fat cats. And this is an opportunity for you to actually take a step, monetize, and revenue sharing into the industry of the new technologies. And I think remote monitoring is just the beginning. You will have remote treatment in real time, and that's where the 5G comes in. When you have remote surgery, when you have these remote diagnostics, where you really have a lot of important assets coming out into the world. That's when you see it. But I think I'm looking for, as a startup or a scale-up, I want a partnership. I want somebody who can actually see the opportunity in helping out. And I think here's something that probably comes from the history, and you need to learn from history to predict the future. I really like that, because the regulations, and it's not just the TRA, it's also the health regulation, it's also other types of regulations. The governments need to look at a vision, because if the telecom operators are not going to be dying dinosaurs but live animals on the market, they need to also be allowed to enter these new markets and become any type of company that acts within the spectrum, where communications is just one aspect of it. And I think that's the question I get every time, basically, I enter into a market and speak to operators. Yeah, but how do we deal with the registration of your medical device? We're not allowed to sell this in our stores. How do we do this? Yeah, I'm here. Talk to me, let's talk about it. I think there's an opportunity here, but I think the regulating assets or the regulatory affairs departments need to also influence the governments and the policies to change the operating environment that the mobile operators are in.
Hatem, you want to reflect on that?
Well, I just want to say something that I think it's a fact that it's not an issue of service providers or operators that they took a back position. It's not the case. It's actually an issue from the industry itself. The whole ecosystem sometimes does not really help you to fulfill your needs as a vertical, for example. And to give you examples, the spectrum, for example, charges that, and I'm not talking here about UAE, but because we operate regionally also in 16 countries, so some of the regulators, they charge us a big amount of spectrum costs, which makes the case for you to invest in new technologies, it's not viable. So sometimes the vendors themselves also, Ericsson, Huawei, the devices sometimes it's not ready. They take a long time. The way that also we have built our network infrastructure, to me it's still, I believe it's still old. We did not went with the pace of the OTTs. If you look at the OTTs and the way that they operate and how did they build their infrastructure and their architecture, it's completely different than the telcos, and it gives them that agility and flexibility really to provide a better customer experience towards to the end users. Regulation, policy, couldn't agree more. Those are very critical also for the success of any model.
So Henrik is saying, I'm here, talk to me, I need support, and you're saying it's complex, but we want to make it happen. So I think the one who's going to solve this is Tarek in the end, right? Tarek, why don't you tell us about your strategy for next year? You told me something really exciting on the phone that you're working on to really support the verticals to succeed in the 5G ecosystem.
Well, I've been hearing about this whole discussion going on right now. It was very interesting. And as I told you earlier before that TRA right now we are working on 5G strategy, which will be coming soon, and within 2 months will be ready. Just we are waiting to see also the result of WRC 19, what will be the result, and then that will be finalized. Immediately after WRC 19, we will have 5G strategy. But in order to see those all, we have the operators here, we have industry here, we have vendors also, and I know that everyone has a requirement, and how to fulfill this requirement is not something easy. When we start working at the beginning for 5G, we established a committee, 3 committees, and those 3 committees was established to to define spectrum or network requirement changes, and which verticals. Actually, we studied this one kind of which verticals or use cases that we need to see it in UAE, or to start with it. It was something not easy also. So now we have fulfilled our requirements, you see, and immediately after this announcing the 5G strategy, we will change our committees, and now we will have different clusters. Those clusters will have, each cluster will work for different vertical. I mean, one cluster will be for health. So we'll bring the health, all the health entities, Ministry or anybody working on health, with the operators, with the vendors, and of course the regulator will be there, and talk to each other to develop, to see first of all the regulation. I agree with Henry that it's not only regulations for the telecom, it requires also to see what the regulation will be used for the health, in order how to see this result for using. Second thing that we can see that, if I take the example of the health, we need to provide the 5G for all over the UAE, for example, all over the countries, or this area, or the cities, or where, and how that is provided. Then we have to see also what type of data traffic required, or latency, or throughput, whatever, for each verticals. And our aim for that one, for those all entities related to that sector, has to work together with the operators, with the vendors, and to see how we can provide those use cases, taking into all consideration, taking the regulation, the spectrum requirement, the charges, everything. Now, today morning I have another question when I said about the spectrum, and I agree Hatem saying about charges, cost of the spectrum. That's true, and I know in some countries when we've been seeing the reports about those options going on right now recently for 5G, it's really very high. As spectrum manager here, I don't know how this charge is coming still. We don't know how the 5G will work, what the revenue will come in. I don't know about that. However, it's all options. The price will be put it all by the operators. It's not by the government. The government put the minimum, but the operators they put their offers and charges. That's the same for the use. I know we had an example. We saw the 3G how it was that option. It was not good for the 3G. It's not coming that time. But this is our future. We are coming. We need to bring all those together here. Whatever one team. Operators have also, I just hear a very good example about the war going on between Salat and Dubai Port. That's what we are encouraging right now. Bring the operators, sit with each entities or those sectors, doing some trial tests, let them see the service, feel it, and then we will see how we can push it. So this is we are going
I think that's great, really creating use case driven ecosystems where all the players can get together to sit down and unlock the potential, right, and collaborate together to see whether it's the devices that are lacking, or whether it's the spectrum, or whether it's and let's make it happen. I think that's fantastic, actually, the thing that you're working on here. So with that, I think we're getting to an end, actually, and I want to give our audience the opportunity to ask questions for you. It's not something we could have prepared, but if anyone has questions, where do we have the microphones? So we have one here and one here. Just raise your hand, we'll come to you. And if you can stand up, say your name and which companies you represent, please. And then you state your question. And try to speak loudly because there's a lot of background noise now.
Assalamu alaikum. Mohammed Aboud from IEEE. My question for the telecom operators, and it is also a comment. I agree with the discussion that we need to think in a different way for enabling the community for using the new technology. Actually, all the old ways was through developing case studies and enforcing for the customer. Now we have to power the crowd. The crowd should be powered. As you said in first, the monetizing of the value of 5G, not in the infrastructure, it is in the application. We need to enable the customers, the users, to develop new applications, new ideas. As you said, that there is a lot of big market you don't understand and we don't understand about. There is healthcare, there is agriculture, there is transportation. All of these markets should be able to use the infrastructure. And this should be happening through somehow or some way that the operators enable the crowd. We have now the cloud, and the companies that working in the cloud, they are trying to enable the market. Operators should do that.
And your question is?
How they can enable the cloud.
How do the operators enable the cloud?
Yes.
Okay, and it goes to who? Who would you like to answer it? Who feels compelled? Hamad, would you like, Ala, you want to take it?
I mean, cloud is a concept by itself. So you start with the virtualization and how we do things on the cloud. This is something that's not directly correlated to the 5G. So the crowd. So I would support you in that regard. I saw there is one of the Harvard studies that they want to operate some problems and asking NASA to solve it, and they put it also to the crowd people. What happened is that the idea is to solve a certain problem for someone in space. It could somehow the knowledge, because you have millions of ideas and creating a platform could develop that. That definitely could solve a problem. But I think as I came back, there is a scientific issue here that you need to create the demand first. It's not always the technologies that are going to solve the issue. There should be always the demand that is coming from the end user, and that's why that's something that really we should encourage.
Did that answer your question? Okay. Yeah. Somehow. You want to fill in, Hamad?
So when we talk about the crowd, what value we bring in as mobile operator, today the crowd goes with the cloud, goes with the ecosystem. I believe the ecosystem, we need to push Ericsson and the likes of the ecosystem for us to get the right use cases and the right setup that we need to work on. I don't think we are mature enough now to enable the crowd. Our value as mobile operator will always gonna end up with our tower that's available throughout the whole country. So without the cloud edge being available for everybody, we will not be able to offer the services to the crowd itself. So we need the likes of Ericsson, we need the likes of Microsoft, of Google, the likes of Amazon to come in and build up their ecosystem to be able to push to enable our network or our towers or our capability to be able to give the ultra low latency. And this is what 5G is promising. This is where we have the ultra low latency. This is where we have it will not be available with a switch of button. It's going to be available when you push everything to the edge, and we need the ecosystem to support that.
Very good, thank you. You want to fill in? No? Okay. Happy? Okay. Anyone else? Yes? Question there?
Hi, my name is Yunus Abad. I work for Ericsson, but I have a little challenging question to the operators. When we look at the telecoms, I like to use the analogy of electricity. When you look at electricity, when it was invented, it took a couple of decades to build. In years to come, the mobile operator will have the base, the core capabilities that they have will remain in the mobile operator. But you're going to find us investing in lots of areas where we'll be able to act as startups and where we can be able to create value. The value is going to come from artificial intelligence, the value is going to come from big data, the value is going to come with the different applications that we can put on the internet or on the 5G or on the capability. So as mobile operator, we need to build a new course for us other than the voice and data. But due to the fact of the regulation, I believe it will be outside of the telco. So we don't pay a lot of money to regulate, to support the other. And I believe this is where we're going to invest in. And this is why I see the industry is going to happen in the next 10 years. It's going to find the core mobile operator available and other investment around it, different to keep up the startup mentality within the telco industry.
I slightly disagree with you on really the perception of referring to telcos as utilities. For one reason, yes, connectivity is one of the core things that we do and will remain, of course, an area of focus, and a big chunk of our business is through connectivity. And if you refer to connectivity as a utility, you might be true, correct in the fiber network or the landline, but in the wireless infrastructure, it's a completely different game there. Yes, it's connectivity, but it comes with a lot of added technologies and a lot of innovations in it also. What I believe the role of telecommunication as an industry in the future, I think that 5G and the fourth industrial revolution that we're talking about is really positioning the telco in a very great position. There is a very great opportunity for us to capture and to play a major role in the enablement and transformation of so many other verticals. This is because of one thing that we have. It's because of our connectivity with those industries. So what we are doing here with Dubai Port is an example of our role as a telco. It's not only a connectivity provider, but it's beyond the connectivity. And we are intending to do this with so many other verticals.
Can I add something to this?
Yes, please.
From industry point of view, I think I agree with both colleague panelists, but it's not really bad, even if you want to tag it as utility. It's not a bad thing to be, because today, as you see, many of our value-added services in any industry, we are positioning it as a service. Something as a service, X as a service, car as a service. So in a way, that is a utility mindset. But what it says is that this service is so ubiquitous that is readily available to everyone, to the extent that we take it for granted. Now, with that comes higher responsibility. But then it means that our society and our community has elevated in their advancement to have this as a given, as a right. Today, internet is considered as a right of people, but 30 years ago, it was not as such. And similarly, the connectivity and the ability to access this knowledge or information or communication, if it's going to go towards being a utility, that's good. If trade and the visibility on the cargo is going to be utility, it is actually something that we want to aim to, because then we focus on what is next.
Very nice. You're fine, Yunus? All good? Great. Any final question? Just a final question. We have time for one more.
Wally Harry's company startup Haritel.
Can you speak louder?
Yes, Wally Harry's company startup Haritel. I have a quick question regarding how you see the uptake of fixed wireless access in the region. Now, mashallah, fiber penetration is very high, but yet how do you see this aspect evolve?
Allah, this one is for you.
Okay, this is interesting. It's the only use case for 5G. I have to be optimistic on this. But if you think that 5G will compete fiber in terms of speed, I think this is not the right way, because nothing is more than the light of speed. This is something that it's, but I think the 5G will be developed for certain areas where FTTH cannot be reached due to the cost of digging and everything. But still, you need not to undermine that the sites that have to have the 5G needs to connect to the fiber. So it's not a replacement of the fiber, it is a complement of the continuation of the coverage. It's very critical, so it's not transport is becoming, they will become jobless from fiber point of view. So no, we had in Mobile, we created certain districts, and this was early start in the beginning of this year, and we developed to have a 5G arena. So we tried to explore that question that you said. So we get some positive feedback in certain spectrum, because Mobile was lucky enough that we have two spectrum. We have the 3.5, which is small coverage but bigger capacity, and we have the 2.6, which have a very good propagation situation. The feedback was quite positive, you know. But we cannot judge now because, you know, you see a couple of users, you know, it's not yet loaded there. So our customer is quite delighted, you know. He's under a full site supporting him, or, you know, a couple of users. So I think it's too early to judge, but I think this should solve serious problems for certain countries. Definitely not Dubai, I'm sure.
Can I add a real example to what Ala is saying? Today, at the ports, we have the technology where we are able to remotely control our equipment. So there are no actual operators on the side, but they are remotely placed in a back office. And we achieve that through fiber, yes, but then at what cost also? Over the time, that will pay itself. But going on a bigger scale and also further distance from the actual operation and the control, we are betting on wireless because the ability to lay down fiber everywhere is not practical. And then comes the question of bandwidth and latency also. So fiber today is, while today maybe it's not at the optimum stage where we can realize all this value, but it's an incremental journey, and we are hoping that this will come.
Great, thank you. That was the end of the Q&A, so thanks a lot for a good question and great answers. Before I let you go, I just want us to summarize what we've been talking about today, and that brings us back to the future, how we actually started this seminar. So I want you to think about, if we sit here 5 years from now, what would be the headline of this seminar? What would be the topic 5 years from now? Who wants to start? Should we start with you, Henrik? You haven't spoken for a while, so.
I think that the most important thing is how do we actually manage to, from our perspective at least, is to move from remote monitoring to actual remote treatment. And that's, I think, the enablement of the 5G technology from our perspective.
Right, so taking it to the next level.
Exactly.
Fantastic, thank you. Brahim?
So we started by saying that the best way to protect the future is to look at the past. We say, also there is a saying that the best way to predict the future is to create it. So we have a strategic plan towards what will be implemented, working in close partnership with Ericsson, Salat and the others to realize these plans. And one of the plans we have as a vision, one of them, is to be able to operate all those sites that we see around the world, and probably starting from a smaller geographical area remotely. And the vision here that came from our chairman was like, if we operate 24/7, why should we bring people to office in the middle of the night? Let those who have night go and sleep and probably spend time with the family, and then when it's the day or the working day starts, let them operate from where they are. So this remote operation and remote connectivity and bringing the workplace to you is something that we see in the future. Hopefully we will see that as a headline.
That's an exciting future to look forward to, isn't it? Tarek, your headline 5 years from now.
Well, we have to find that how we can make this collaboration together. So this is our important, we have to see the collaboration between all entities. And I forget to mention also one important entities that have to be part of this collaboration. It's the universities, where we are already started now working with them in bringing us here to see the making papers or devices, studies, this kind of thing. So the collaboration between all those from now, it's important for all in order to make success of this.
Fantastic. So collaboration coming to life, right? Aman.
I believe 5 years from today, the headline should be that. First of all, let me give me the background. We as a telco, we got disrupted big time with the OTTs. So I believe 5G will allow us to become from a disrupted into a disruptor. So hopefully we're going to become a disruptor.
Becoming a disruptor, that's great. I like that. Allah.
Okay, so I'm sure 5 years from now, okay, that we'll have someone like Steve Jobs. You know, I don't know, is it from the operators, from the vendors, from the crowd, coming and solving this mess that we're not able to answer you. But I'm sure 5 years from now we will have the answer.
Maybe that would be you, Allah.
Maybe. So,
I don't know.
Why not?
Optimistic. Fantastic. And Hatem, and finally, last.
Yeah, I think, I hope that 5 years from now we will have a lot of 5G use cases, a lot of 5G coverage, a lot of 5G connectivity. And I guess that 5 years from now we will sit here and brag about the use cases, so everybody will claim the first. And I guess this is five years from now.
So we can continue to be proud of the fantastic work we have done. I like that, right? We need to be confident, right? I think 5 years from now, 5G would really be something that is transforming our lives, growing our businesses, and improving our societies to be more sustainable as well. So with that, thank you a lot for fantastic insight. I think it was a great panel, and I must say I am lucky actually to have worked with these fantastic gentlemen. I got an opportunity to speak to each one of them beforehand, and you can see the energy and enthusiasm here. So thanks a lot for being part with us today, and yeah, you may go back to your seat.